This is set in a post-apocalyptic world where humanity is defended from earless attacks by the players. In Liverchester, Echo Rex spends his days working at the garbage site, looking for valuable parts. At the end of the day, he sees reflection and sees a good part. As he attempts to take it, he falls, causing the trash to reveal a girl under it. He takes it back to his sister, Swell, and while looking at the girl, he sees she has an output jack on her hip and realizes she is a player. The girl then wakes up but has no memory of who she is. At his sister's bar, Echo explains that the player uses equipment to fight the earless, but the girl still has no idea what he is talking about. The town mayor and Echo's boss then come in. As his man had seen Echo carry a player, the mayor told the girl to leave town, as players had brought only bad things for them. Echo tries to defend her and convince him not to throw her right away, but as the mayor doesn't back down, Swell gives him a free beer and calms him down. Echo and the girl move upstairs, where he continues to explain what players are and that he is a huge fan. He shows her some equipment he is working on, but the girl finds it kind of small, and Echo explains it's because it's missing a core part and can't turn into gig form yet. Seeing how passionate he is, the girl decides to try and pilot it one day when he finishes it and wants them to leave together. However, Echo starts explaining that he is just an ordinary guy and can't really be a player's partner. The girl is annoyed and decides to leave, and Echo accidentally makes his equipment fall and break. Going downstairs, Swell overheard their conversation and gave the girl money, explaining where the train station is and telling her that if she changed her mind, she could always come back. After staying all night and fixing his equipment, Swell comes in the morning and informs Echo that Earless is attacking the city. She tells him where Echo is, and he heads towards the station with his equipment. The Earless gather around the town monument, and Echo almost reaches the girl, but hits the ground, causing Echo to fall through a hole. As he falls, he initially accepts his death, but recalling his life, he states that he wants to live. In that moment, the girl arrives, telling him she likes that attitude, and they connect her to his equipment. The equipment then turns into its mecha form, and she fights and defeats the Earless. Echo then gives her a part explaining that the symbol on it reads Moo and decides to call the girl Moo. The mayor thanks them for saving the monument, but as he is thanking them, the monument falls, and Echo and Moo decide to run before they get blamed for it. Traveling on the train and crossing a bridge, Moo wakes up Echo and shows him how deep it looks. Suddenly, Moo's medallion shines, Earless attacks, and they use Echo's equipment. They start fighting, but Moo is unable to fire her attack, and they end up falling off the bridge. The Noise sisters show up, commenting that the light is what they have been looking for. Echo and Moo light a fire to warm and dry themselves. Echo guesses the attack didn't work because they need to name it and suggests Arizona Chainsaw. As Moo pulls out the player's almanac, Echo guesses they can ask other players about who Moo is. He reveals he knows everyone on that almanac, but there are players like the one he met in his childhood who aren't on the list, and he guesses there must be a special reason for him and Moo to not be on it. When Moo falls asleep, Echo decides to go and pee, but to his surprise, he sees a weird-looking bathroom and decides to enter. He meets the Noise sisters and attempts to run, but they still catch up to him. They ask him about Moo's core part and if she is the successor, or remnant of the collapse. Echo recognizes them as the Noise sisters, explains he is a big fan, and asks for an autograph. Hearing that, the sisters are unprepared as it's the first time anyone asks them for an autograph, and they start to panic and wonder what to do. Moo awakens and goes to look for Echo. She finds him unresponsive and sees the sisters. The sisters use their powers and activate their equipment. Echo does the same, but as she attempts to attack one of the sisters, she disappears and Earless appears. The sisters realize she doesn't know how to use Dada's power, and is even weaker than a normal player. They tell Moo that Earless are humans who failed to become players and are seeking salvation from the players. Moo sees a man in her memory, and the sister explains that he is the king of the Earless. They show her holding Echo, and in her attempt to save him, they mock her, and in her anger, she hits Echo. The real Echo then wakes up, seeing how the sisters defeat Moo, but then a red mecha arrives from the sky. A flashback, where Kevin and Billin head towards Liverchester, but a green light appears, defeating the Earless. Then, years later, Billin sees the same light and heads towards the forest. As she arrives, she quickly attacks and defeats two of the sisters, recognizing them. The oldest sister starts attacking her, teleporting and landing hits, but after analyzing her, she reads her pattern and defeats her as well. Echo and Moo later wake up on Billin's ship. Billin introduces herself as the deputy director of Tremolo Technology and explains that they rely on the noise the Earless makes and collect abandoned equipment from all around the world. Moo wonders why she saved them, and Billin explains that 10 years ago, there was a big festival in a certain country, an unprecedented large-scale operation to wipe out the earless that gathered many players. But the operation failed as a huge amount of earless appeared and many pieces of equipment were reduced to scrap. The festival failed due to the most powerful player going rogue, Jimmy. And he had the same core part as Moo, so she took her into custody. She asks Moo who she is, but Moo explains she has amnesia. Villain explains that her power could destroy the world and proposes that she stay with them for a while, as she doesn't have anywhere to go and she can't just let her roam free. Meanwhile, Echo looks into the equipment and sees that a rectifier tube has burned out. As he wonders what to do, Kevin appears, and Echo is shocked to see him, but Kevin calms him down, telling him he needs to think of the equipment. Learning that he is from Liverchester, he is impressed that Echo managed to make the equipment from scrap there. While working on fixing the equipment, Echo comments that Kevin used to be a player, and Sue used to be piloted by both Kevin and Billin, but now wonders why Kevin stepped down. Kevin explains that Billin is a knight, and is willing to lay her life down for her country, but that scares him more than losing his country. He then asks Echo what the name of his equipment is, but Echo hasn't named it yet. On the roof, Billin approaches Moo and comments that Moo is scared of losing Echo. She explains that a player needs conviction, which becomes the path and the light to guide the earless. As Billin leaves, Echo arrives and tells Moo that the equipment's name is AC-30. Moo attempts to tell him that it's dangerous to be with her, but Echo doesn't care and wants to see the world with her. Billin then comes out with her mecha Sue and wants to test Moo and Echo. As they fight, Moo and Echo can't even get closer to Billin and Kevin. Echo proposes they use Top Boost, an attack Moo has used before. She agrees, and using Top Boost, they create a green sphere around them. Billin is sure it's the same as Jimmy, but much hotter. They use similar attacks but create a much bigger sphere, and defeat Moo and Echo. After the fight, Moo asks Billin if she will let the ship disembark, and Billin agrees, but on one condition. She explains that after the festival, many players withdrew to their own domains, and each has a secret that Jimmy and Moo must meet to uncover the truth about the power. Moo and Echo visit Freak Scene Academy, which has produced many great players. They meet with the director, Kim, who explains that even though she is the director, no one listens to her. She reveals that Billin had contacted her and said that a player named Moo may come and request information about Jimmy, but she can't give outsiders information easily. Kim shows them a spray can of Teen Spirit and asks them to find the source of it, and she will give them Jimmy's file. Kim introduces Moo and Echo as new students, and Moo quickly becomes popular among the boys. As the boys surround her, Hull, the student council president, takes her away and guesses that Kim asked them to find Teen Spirit, a drug used by players to relieve stress, and tells Moo that he will help. Meanwhile, Echo gets followed by Nur, who explains she wants to be his friend. She takes him to the roof, where she likes to hang out, and reveals that she lost her parents long ago. But after seeing a picture of Jimmy, she got inspired to become a player like him. Moo is unable to find any trace of who gives the Teen Spirit. Echo shows the amp he made to Nur, and she ends up plugging it into her jack and activating it. She uses Teen Spirit and starts attacking the school, eventually slamming her to the ground and managing to escape. Knowing how the Teen Spirit is made, Moo figures out it's made in a closed pool, where she finds Nur and Hull. Hull reveals he is the one making it and has managed to convince Nur to join him and destroy the world with him, just like Jimmy tried to. Hull gives Nur the student council amp, and she activates it. Having no choice, Moo does the same and engages Nur in a fight. Echo faces Hull, who states that Nur isn't his friend, but a trump card, and after they graduate, he plans to sell the drug in her to the military. He attacks Echo and makes both of them fall from the jumping platform of the pool, but Nur catches Echo, while leaving Hull to fall into the drug-filled pool. Nur explains that she no longer can stay in the school, and that eventually all players go insane. Having solved the case, Kim gives them Jimmy's file, but it's mostly redacted to keep his information top secret. They see a picture of Jimmy and Danka, and Kim comments that after graduating, Jimmy went to see Danka. Arriving at Danka's Galaxy Palace, Moo and Echo get separated as Moo spends all of their money on something that she doesn't discuss with Echo. Needing money, they each decide to join Danka's new project, which also gives them a place to live, but end up in the same room in their new dorm, reuniting them again. Rumors about them reach Danka, who then places Moo at Telephone Love Sexy, where she needs to answer calls in a sexy way, and Echo at New Power Generation, a workshop for equipment. They spend a week working, and on payday, the old man working with Echo, Mr. Marshall, takes Echo's pay and wants to take him to some play where he can get some love, but on their way there, Echo loses him. Echo then meets Danka, who introduces himself as Kid. They spend some time together, and Echo tells him about Jimmy, and Danka comments that he also wants Jimmy to guide him and that he wants to save the world without causing grief and suffering. Danka then states he feels love in Echo's radiance, and it's about Moo. Echo tries to deny it, but Danka takes him to Club Love Sexy, where Echo ends up talking with Moo on the phone. Moo is annoyed that the first thing he does after getting paid is go to a love club. Wendy and Lisa then come and take Moo and Echo to First Avenue, where they explain that normally equipment fights are held. Wendy and Lisa know that Moo is a player, and Echo is an amp builder, and they reveal they are players themselves and want to have a match with them. If they win, they will get them to meet Danka, but if they lose, they will have to leave the city, which Moo accepts. Moo and Echo end up losing easily, but Echo begs them for another chance, and they agree to fight them again in a week. The fight becomes official, and people gather to see it. On a big screen, Danka announces the start of the fight, and Moo and Echo realize Mr. Kid is Danka. Wendy and Lisa realize Echo and Moo are fighting differently, and this time Moo and Echo manage to beat them using Top Boost. As the fight ends, Earless starts attacking, and they are prepared to fight them. Danka then uses his equipment, which is the whole city, and defeats the Earless. After that, Danka apologizes for testing Moo, and Echo then decides to tell them all he knew. He reveals that for Project Freedom to work, they needed to guide the core of the Earless, and to do that, they needed people who wished to coexist with the Earless. They couldn't tell them the true plan, but as he spent time, he realized he was wrong. Jimmy had the same pendant as Moo and also had a little sister. They weren't able to stop the project in time and ended up betraying Jimmy and failing the mission. The people of Gnome and Jimmy had disappeared, and Danka hadn't seen any of them in the last 10 years. As the people of Gnome won't meet Danka for his betrayal, he gives Moo and Echo an old map of Gnome and states that they may agree to meet them. Before leaving, Danka asks them if they will meet Jimmy to tell him that Danka still loves him. Moo and Echo are getting close to Gnome, but Echo doesn't feel well. They see the ocean, and Moo gets excited. Echo comments that the Island of Gnome should be seen from there, but he is unable to see anything, although Moo states she sees a door in the ocean. A moment later, Echo collapses with a nosebleed, and Moo starts yelling for help. In that moment, her pendant shines, and a path in the ocean is revealed, leading to an invisible island. On the island, Moo sees Roz and asks her for help. Roz explains that Echo has a classical case of sound sickness, and players' partners often come down with it. As it looks advanced, Roz guesses Moo has put him under a lot of stress lately, and that he will soon turn into an earless, as sound sickness is the initial symptom of becoming an earless. There is an old medicine to stop the transformation, but as Moo is a player and an enemy to the earless, she either needs to accept him as an earless or leave him in Roz's care as an earless. Moo takes off her pendant, stating that she will stop being a player if she can help Echo. Echo later wakes up, and Moo is happy. But as he hears what happened, he tells Moo that she got lied to and decides to go talk to Roz himself. Meeting Roz, Echo thanks her for saving him, as he feared that he may end up transforming and attacking Moo. Roz comments that she isn't returning Moo's core part but knows she isn't like the rest of the players, as even when her earless appeared, she didn't prepare to fight. Roz knows this is Jimmy Stonefree's core part, and Echo explains they came this way looking for him and asks Roz if she can tell him something about Jimmy. Roz agrees if that is going to make them leave. She explains that in the past, the country was peaceful, with humans and earless living together. One day, Jimmy arrived, and he enjoyed his time with the earless too. They heard about the festival but couldn't refuse, and as the countries were stating they wanted to protect the earless outside of Gnome, they ended up giving them all the data they have on the earless. Their fears turned true when the countries indeed wanted to wipe out the earless and caused even the earless in Gnome to lose senses. Jimmy tried to stop them, but he never returned. Suddenly, the Noise sisters arrive but are shocked to see that Moo no longer has the core part. As they attack, an earless protects her. Roz calls him Papa, and the Noise sisters realize that every earless in Gnome was a fallen citizen. The sisters manage to turn the earless against Roz, but Moo and Echo protect her. Roz gives back the core parts and asks them to save her father. To the sisters' surprise, Moo is much stronger and easily manages to beat them. Having saved the earless, Moo is annoyed at Roz for lying to her that Echo would turn into an earless, and Roz realizes he told her that. She tells Moo that after the festival, the injured Jimmy was taken and was supposed to be brought to their country, but she believes he got abducted by Londinium, as they were the ones that made the arrangements for Jimmy's escort. Leaving for Londinium, in that moment, helicopters arrive, and a man refers to Moo as Princess and tells her they came for her. The man, Tommy, takes them to Londinium Watchtower, their stronghold. He explains that Moo is Jimmy's sister, and that's why he calls her Princess. Moo asks what happened to Jimmy after he was brought here 10 years ago. A man in a wheelchair, Ace, appears and explains that he was a pilot 10 years ago. He witnessed Jimmy's final gig, He was their trump card. But during the battle he suddenly stopped attacking and faced an earless in the gate and disappeared. Ace still believes Jimmy isn't dead and roams somewhere beyond the gate. They inform Moo that they are preparing for a performance in a week during Christmas, where they want to pay tribute to Jimmy and recreate his scene with the gate, and they wish Moo to play Jimmy. They will artificially recreate the gate and hope that Jimmy will be back. After discussing it with Echo and confirming he wants to meet Jimmy and learn about Moo, Moo agrees to perform, and they spend the week rehearsing. She hears kids humming a song she also hums and asks one of them where he learned it. The kid explains that, according to Tommy, every player has known it since birth. On Christmas, Moo starts performing. When the last part comes, Tommy sprays her and explains that Jimmy isn't coming back and that their aim is to make Moo the next Jimmy. He then plugs her into Jimmy's old equipment and lets her face a large mass of earless. In that moment, she realizes that Jimmy was an earless who was selected as a human player. Moo then destroys all of Earless, along with Lyd and Richie. Ace faces Tommy, stating that the plan was to bring Jimmy back. However, Tommy explains they got him back in a new vessel that is more powerful than before. With Moo defeating the Earless mass, Tommy announces his plan for a new Project Freedom. As Jimmy came back, players from around the world started to gather in Londinium. Tommy later thanks the Noise Sisters, but tells them he no longer needs their help. Living on the streets, Echo meets Nur, who is heading to the cemetery. He tells her that Moo is Jimmy's sister, and they didn't expect this to happen. Nur tells him that if Jimmy was an earless, then Moo is an earless too. As Earless had killed Nur's parents, she told Echo that she would kill Moo. Echo decides to stick with Nur, and to stop her and Moo. Echo helps Nur infiltrate the watchtower, and they find the storage with purple haze from which Teen Spirit was made. They meet Marshall, but he betrays them, and Nur and Echo get caught. Ace hears about purple haze and confronts Tommy, who explains he plans to use it on everyone and make them obedient. And with that, they will not only win over the earless but also win supremacy for Londinium for a long time. Tommy had made the children spies, and they informed him that Ace had contacted Danka the Purple and the Countryless King in secret. As he betrayed Londinium, he shot and killed Ace. Joe, a friend of Richie and Lyd, visits Nur in the cells and frees her. Not wanting Echo to get in her way, she leaves him there and heads to take her amp from Marshall. Echo still manages to escape on his own and finds Moo. However, Tommy waits for Echo and tells him that Moo is no longer the same and is with him of her own free will. Echo explains he realized the enemy wasn't the earless and attempts to tell Moo something, but Nur arrives and interrupts him. She prepares to attack Moo, but as it turns midnight and the new year approaches, Tommy activates his plan and Moo awakens and fights off Nur. Moo can't recognize Echo and uses over-the-top boost, but Nur protects him from the blast. Marshall then throws Echo into a pipe and sends him to the bottom of the watchtower. He then visits him there, giving Echo his amp and commenting that he isn't with anyone. Echo remains on the leaving train and ends in Clarksdale. He is found by Janice, who brings him to her farm and cleans him. Echo tells her about his journey, and Janice is impressed by his adventure. As he doesn't have anywhere to go, she tells him he can stay there for a while. Echo stays there and starts helping out on the farm. One day he finds vinyls in the basement and wonders what they are, and Janice explains they're sort of like chronicles about things they don't want to forget. Time passes, and Echo gets used to the life on the farm, making him state that he doesn't mind staying forever there. Janice then asks him if he will give Moo's core part then, but he tells her he can't. Janice comments that he is the same as her brother and asks him to come with her as he will be tested by the Crossroads. She takes him to the Crossroads and explains that at the center of all is the father of all players and source of all equipment, the Origin. Robert explains that the Origin grants humans the power to convey what's in their hearts, and, to Earless, a guide to salvation. Robert plays a vinyl record, making Moo's core part shiny. He explains that one day the Earless appeared in front of the humans, but soon a war started between them, and being helpless, the humans prayed to at least convey what was in their hearts. The Origin then appeared, and its light gave birth to the cores of numerous pieces of equipment, and humans' passion guided many Earless. However, at the same time, emotions like rage and hatred brought greater savagery to the Earless. The people of Blues, who advocated against the fighting, were reduced to half. A young man, Jimmy, decided to protect the land even if it meant selling his soul. In front of the gate, Jimmy realizes that they have been hearing them and decides to embrace the listener's anger. As his core part falls, a listener picks it up and turns it into Moo. Echo doesn't care if he doesn't become a god or devil. All he wants is to see Moo again. A jagged plug appears on his back, and Robert tells him to stay true to his heart. Robert then disappears, and Janice explains that Origin houses the memories of all creation and plays them back, and Robert was one of those memories of a country that ended long ago. She tells Echo he is like her brother Jimmy, just a human, but he managed to change the world a little. She tells him he will do something that anyone can do, but when he does it, it will become something only he could have done. Janice then also disappears. In front of the gate, Moo grows horns and explains she is neither Jimmy nor his sister, but the king of the earless listeners. She then releases more earless from the gate, and Tommy states that if they kill her, it will fulfill their long-held dream. Listeners then easily kill Tommy, and she states that in 7 days, she will descend upon this land once more, create a blast, and leave. Roz wakes up to find the earless rampaging and learns about listeners. Danka arrives in Londinium, and Sally explains that Tommy started a rebellion against Ace and tried to take the world with the help of the earless, but listeners, the king of the earless, obliterated him. Danka fights the remaining earless and sends flyers informing people where they can get help and food. Roz visits Danka and explains she isn't there for things in the past and isn't there to help the world, but wants to help a friend, who now calls herself Listeners. Roz believes that if they stop Dual Showman, they will manage to free Moo. Meanwhile, Billin learns of Roz joining Danka and blames herself for letting Moo go even though she felt something like this could happen. She decides to join Danka, as she feels she must be the one to stop Moo. Before leaving, Kevin stops her, explaining that he ran in the past because he was thinking there could be another way to save Jimmy. But with listeners, the world is now uniting, and maybe they can come up with a different answer than 10 years ago. Danka explains that even if he hits Dual Showman with full power from his equipment, it won't do anything. Kevin and Billin arrive, and Kevin states there is a way to link them. Roz figures that listeners will appear in Liverpool. In Liverchester, Magi finally rises up their monument, but they find out the gate. Swell gets visited by the spirit Moo, who tells her to run. Danka and the rest approach Liverchester and see the gate activate, and earless and listeners come out of it. Having connected all the equipment, Danka shoots a beam at the listeners. Moo deploys a shield, but his beam manages to break it and hit Dual Showman. Dual Showman breaks, but listeners then create a new earless equipment and fire back at Danka. Roz deploys the wall but only manages to lower the damage. Kevin tells everyone to evacuate, as he will stay behind and slow listeners. While the rest are evacuating, Billin and Nur head towards the listeners but are easily pushed back by them. Echo then appears as a player using his equipment. Echo faces listeners. Some recognize him but don't believe AC-30 has a chance given how powerful listeners. Echo tries to tell Moo that she isn't Jimmy's younger sister or a monster who tries to destroy the world. Listeners don't want to listen to him and shoot a beam, cutting one of AC-30's arms. Listeners wonder who they are, and not just beings that exist. They wanted to know about themselves and why people fear them. They wanted to know about the things humans do, but as no one will try to know more about them, they no longer care. Listeners then prepare for a large-scale attack and release multiple beams in every direction. Echo uses Top Boost, releasing an attack that causes all earless to stop and start humming. With Moo's soul core, Echo creates multiple jacks and takes parts from the ground, creating more speakers and overpowering listeners. Listeners tell him they are nobody, and are different from each other. Echo agrees, but because of that, they try to understand and meet. Both AC-30 and listener equipment break, and Moo starts falling into a hole. Echo reaches for her and tells her she is Moo, and Moo's core part starts to shine. Danka believes that Jimmy's second coming was Echo, but Rod corrects him that Echo just expressed what was in his heart, and the world chose to be moved by it. In the aftermath, earless in human form, walked freely with humans. Echo also states that he isn't a player anymore, and his jack is also gone. He pulls his pants up to show it, and Moo blushes and calls him an idiot. Thank you for watching till the end, and please don't forget to subscribe.